down in the shop here, everyone, and we're looking at this 12-inch DeWalt compound miter saw. And this is a really useful tool. You can cut all kinds of shapes, extrusions. You can cut pieces, little thick pieces of plate. Got a lot of stuff with it. It is also a very dangerous tool if it's not used correctly. So we're going to go over definitely a lot of safety stuff about this. And it's called a compound miter saw. It goes two ways. This way it'll actually go all the way over to 60-degree bevel, and this way it doesn't actually go as far. It only goes to 50. It has a couple little stops. It'll stop at 0. It'll stop at, I think it stops at 15. It'll stop at 45, which is kind of nice, but also clicks in. We push down and we click that in, and it's really super fast. It also slides back and forth. You can tighten it so it won't do that, but we don't want to tighten it when we use that. We always have to have a guard on it. And I don't know if you can see this blade, but this blade is a DeWalt thin kerf blade. And this is one of the occasions where I'm going to tell you they don't like this blade because it doesn't have enough teeth. Now, I've usually told you that we want to have a really coarse, but this has one teeth for every 1.25 inches. It's a 12-inch diameter. It doesn't have enough teeth on it. And I'm going to show you a saw that does have the right amount of teeth, but it has a less than desirable type of latch. I'm going to show it to you because it's right over here. So we've moved over to our next saw, just one bench over. And this thing has a lot more teeth in it. And they're I don't know, they come in numbers of teeth. It's 80 teeth, 100 teeth, stuff like that. This one is one tooth about every, it's a little under 1/2 inch, every 3/8 or so. This thing has a lot of power, and aluminum is very soft. We've talked about that. It'll have a tendency to grab, especially if there's small pieces. This blade is also not really the right one for cutting aluminum, but it's not too bad. It works pretty good. It's what's called a triple chip, which means the shape of the teeth are different. They make one with a negative angle that's specifically for aluminum, about $150. They really, really cut good. We should have one of those here. This one works pretty good, and we're going to be able to use it. We're going to demonstrate some of the things that we can cut today. I've got a nice new blade here, and I was saying we're talking about blades a little bit. I actually love talking about blades. But this one, it's for a 12-inch made by Hitachi, and it's got quite a few teeth in it. It's a 90-tooth blade. And this thing is going to cut pretty smooth, and we're going to like it. I'm just going to open it up and talk about it a little bit. Now, don't be dropping this on the floor or anything like that, because this thing's expensive. This is probably 150 bucks, okay? It has a 1-inch arbor in it. It has these little weird things in it, and these are relief things. It makes the blade run smoother, okay? And so they can have unique different things about them. It's a 1-inch thing. It obviously has to only go on one way because it turns one way. Don't be putting it on backwards. Make sure the saw is unplugged while you're doing that. And that's going to work excellent. Okay, if you're working on the blade, you're changing the blade, why not unplug it? You're less likely to hurt yourself if it's not going to turn on. So you're changing the blade, just unplug it. Okay, I'm going to tell you a couple other things you should know about this blade. One, you can take and you can spin it by hand. You can spin it around, and you can push this up to it. And maybe I should have done it on that side so that you can see. We can take and we can spin this around, and we can see if it's bent, because it'll run real true or it'll wobble. If it wobbles, it's bent, and it's going to do a wider cut, and it's going to take longer, and it's also going to become more dangerous. We don't want a bent blade on there. There's another thing that will happen, and if people don't put wax on here once in a while, it's going to happen more frequently, and sometimes it's going to get a clog in between one of the teeth. And that clog, because I've told you that the aluminum is really soft, it'll actually get a whole blob of aluminum in between one of the teeth. It'll start to make a real racket. I can tell when I'm walking by if somebody has something stuck in there. It's not a big deal. It doesn't mean the blade's wrecked. We've got a pair of pliers on us because we always have that. We get in there, we just break that little bit out. We make sure, we spin it around, make sure it's not bent, that the tooth isn't falling half off. We're going to still be able to use the saw and use the blade. That's just a little bit about things that will happen to it. So it's something to watch for. I guess wanted to get started by saying it's our rule here at US Workboats that we never cut anything less than 24 inches in total length. Never cut anything less than 24 inches in total length because we can't hold it, okay? And if we gotta cut something shorter than that, we may have a piece, some junk here, maybe we wanna cut this in half. Well, this is not the application for it. We're gonna take and we're gonna use a different tool. We'll use a bandsaw, we'll use something else. Because this thing needs proper support. Okay, so one of the things about this chop saw is this bench is made up. It's really nice that we can load different stuff in here and work. But every time we come by here and look at this, it's a mess. And I don't like a mess. And you probably have seen that I don't like a mess. And look at this brush here. And I'd like this to be cleaned up every day. And if you start using it, there's junk all over the table. Clean the junk off the table first, because we might have multiple pieces and we can set stuff here while we're working, but we take the pieces away and we don't leave junk on here for the next person. That's important. We can cut with this saw, we can cut wood, we can cut plastic, or we can cut aluminum. We absolutely never will cut steel, or copper, or any other metals. Aluminum or wood or plastic are acceptable because of the blade type. So it'll wreck it if you do that and you cut something else. This brush, I'm going to make something to hang it on, but we're going to have it here all the time so we can keep this area clean. Okay, I would consider this like a mess, and I don't like a mess. I keep telling you guys I don't want this junk all over the place, and I don't want to save these short little stupid pieces. Okay, and if we look down here, there's all this junk underneath here, and I don't like that. So I went ahead and I bought a very unique scrap metal bucket here, and we're going to keep it by the chop saw. I'm going to put it there. Nobody's going to do anything with these. It's like we're going to get paid for the scrap, but we're not going to just let them sit all over. We're going to put them in this bucket. If we keep that there, then we can just throw them in there all the time, and then somebody just pick the whole bucket, they dump the whole thing in the scrap. Okay? That's going to go there. Then we don't have bits of junk like this underneath there. Just throw away the little bits of junk. We're going to clean off underneath here, and we're going to organize stuff, or sort of medium long pieces. We're going to organize them in some kind of a fashion here. We're not going to put pieces with scabs on them, and we're going to go through and clean that up. That way we have some pieces for later. Come along, we go, okay. I'm not going to put a thing with junk all over it underneath there because it needs to be cleaned up. Maybe somebody can clean that up, and then they can put it in there. We can clean this. This saw is super useful, but if it's a mess, it's not useful. All right, this saw is going to require wax, okay? And so we really want to make sure we don't ever use a short piece of wax on here, because when we're applying that, we're never going to use short wax. We're going to use like a long tube, okay? A new tube or a fairly new tube, but if it starts getting worked down, we're going to say, hey, that's still good. Somebody else can use it for their grinder or something. But when we apply the wax, we want to just go ahead and we want to get right in. I like to get right in here, and I want to put this up against and put a little bit of wax on there. Like that, and we'll put it back here, and we're going to keep that there all of the time. Okay, I want to mention something that's still about the wax. If we cut a piece of wood, we can cut wood here on the saw. It cuts it great. But if we cut wood on there, it's going to take all the wax back off the blade, so we're going to have to redo a little bit of wax. It's important. Now, another thing I want to tell you is sometimes we have these pieces, which I would call these like scabs, they're like weld things on here. Now, we're not ever going to cut a piece with scabs on it, because if we try and put it up here against the fence, what's going to happen is it's not going to be properly supported. It's going to wiggle. It's going to wiggle. It's going to catch. It's just not going to do that because that would be, it would be, you know, just not very smart. We're going to take and we're going to grind the scabs off, and now we can cut this piece of angle. It doesn't mean the angle was junk just because there were scabs on it. In fact, it'd be good for some of you guys getting to learn to use grinder to clean up a bunch of this stuff. We can organize and we can keep it underneath here, and we can use it for different things. Okay, I got a piece of 2x2 square tube here. It's 3/16 wall, round corner. It's more than 24 inches in total length. Okay, we said we're not going to cut anything that's less than 24 inches ever because we're not going to support it. This is getting close to the smallest we're going to cut. We're going to cut a small piece off the end of this thing. And what I'm going to tell you is I'm not going to let the saw back up until it stops turning. Because if it does, it's going to want to grab that little piece. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, I got some wax on and we're ready to go. Okay, it's completely stopped turning and I'm going to let it up. In this case, this little piece ended up back there, but if I let that blade up, it's going to have a tendency to grab that little piece and it's going to throw it. It's going to throw it across the building like that. It's going to hit somebody, it's going to damage that, it's going to damage that blade, it's going to break a tooth. It's going to be really dumb if you do that. So every time you cut, and especially with the little pieces, you're going to keep that blade down until it stops turning. All right, now that I've cut that piece off like that, I'm going to tell you, we can take and we can change the angle here, and we can cut maybe, I don't know, let's go ahead and we'll cut at 30 degrees, and I'm going to cut a small piece off the corner of this. We let it stop, and we've now got an angle on the end of that piece of square tube. We may be fitting it into a corner or something. Worked out real nice for us. Okay, everybody. I'm now going to cut a piece of angle. What I want to say is, by the way, if you're cutting on different, you know, bevels or whatever, please go ahead and put the saw back to square when you're done with it and tighten it back up, lock it into place. Because the next guy who comes along, don't leave junk all over and don't leave it all over the place. Put it back to square because most things are going to be cut square. It's just a little consideration for your coworkers. I got a piece of angle, and I want to talk about the fact we're never going to cut an angle that way because it's not supported, and it's going to fly up like this, and it's going to catch. It's not going to be what we want to do. We want to cut it this way, so it's got some good support there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark a piece. I'm going to say that this little piece of angle here, I want to cut it at 3 inches, and I can mark it down there, or I can mark it up. I'm going to be able to look right at this. And when I look down the blade, I'm going to see right where it's going to cut. I'm going to be real happy with that, but I'm going to tell you something else. We're going to cut more than one at 3 inches. I'm going to have a tendency to want to do it the right, smart way, and I'm going to put a little mark right here, right on my table, and I'm going to say, hey, the next piece I cut is also going to be 3 inches if I just line it up with that mark. Let it stop. I've checked out my length. Real happy with the length. Set that down. Let's just say we want to have 2 or 3 pieces like that. We'll line it right back up with that mark again. We'll go ahead and we'll cut it. Make sure not to let anything be behind there because it needs to be supported. Okay, and I've got 3 pieces of 1 length. Well, that worked out pretty good. Maybe now I'm going to say, hey, I want to cut this at a 45 degree. Go ahead. I'm going to put that on 45 degrees. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to look down here and I want to make sure I'm cutting it right in the right spot. I can eye up my blade. And I'm never going to put my hands in here close. By the way, the tighter the angle, the more apt to grab the material the saw is. He wants to pull it in there, so we don't want to have our hands in there, okay? We don't want to have our hands in there. And by the way, this is a pretty easy piece and it's longer, so I'm not going to have any trouble cutting it without doing this. But it's just going to be just fine if we want to go ahead one day and we say, hey, we got an awkward piece. Well, we don't want the danger, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to clamp this on here tight. You can't go anywhere, okay? You don't need that for this demonstration because I got a long piece and I can get my hands out of the work area. It's not an awkward shape. I wanted to demonstrate it's going to be fine to use a clamp. Okay, we're going to go ahead and cut a 45. By the way, if we're cutting 45s, we're making some sort of a tray. We could cut our next piece that way and our next piece that way. And then before we go and switch back over this way and cut the other way, we can now bring our pieces in from this side and we're going to be able to work faster. Okay guys, so I've decided I want to cut a bunch of pieces. I made myself a list, okay? Let's talk a little bit about yield for a second. You know, if I got a lot of pieces to make and I made myself a list already, I'm going to always make all the long pieces first, because if I make the short pieces first, then geez, all of a sudden I don't have enough material left because I cut it all short and now there's a bunch of... So you're going to cut the long pieces first and then you're going to cut the short pieces out of what's remaining. It's going to be a real smart idea for us. I've decided I want some 17 1/4, but I want to, let's just say that I want 100 of them 17 1/4. I don't want to mark every one. So what I've done here, you can see, is, by the way, these 3-inch pieces I don't want, I'm going to put them in my scrap bin. I've done here is I've gone and I've clamped this piece of square tube on here. I marked it, I sighted down here so that it was going to cut just where I wanted. And I came in here and I clamped this piece of square tube on here. Square tube works really good for a stop. And I don't know if you can see right here, but what I'm doing is I'm pushing that into the stop so that it's going to turn out exactly 17 1/4 every time. Now I can do a couple things. I could mark that on the table so I made sure that it wasn't moving over time when I was banging my thing into it. It wasn't moving it. I'd look at that. You know, another thing that I'm going to suggest here, the reason I cut this on an angle, I'm going to suggest to you that you might do something like this. I don't know if you can see it here, but what I did is I got a little bit cut off of that. I did that to get started. And I'm going to put that like that. So I push my piece up in here, and the reason is the chips here that are coming off this might build up in the corner, and then all of a sudden I'm going to start putting my piece in against the chips, and all of a sudden my pieces are going to get shorter and shorter, and I don't like that, because when I cut this thing, if I want it 17 1/4, I want it exactly 17 1/4, because I'm picky like that, and I don't want to build chips up in the corner. That's going to really help. Now, we want it 17 1/4, we're going to cut it. Let it stop, we're going to take that out of there. We're going to get another piece. And we're going to get another piece. As you can see, okay, we can cut this channel, and I don't usually cut channel this way. I usually cut it this way. I'm not going to cut this. I'm actually going to just tell you that channel is my favorite thing to use with straight edge. It's the straightest thing we're going to find in the shop. Tell you guys something about the saw here. Is this saw backstop is bent, and the backstop being bent is bad because the worse it gets, the more it's not going to support it. And the other thing is, whatever angle we think we're cutting here, and we have this in here, it's going to be off by a degree or two because this thing is starting to have a gap back here, which means that it's bent. That needs to be fixed. And when we see that happening, we're going, well, let's take it apart and let's fix it, or let's replace the equipment if we have to, but let's just not use things when they're screwed up. Keep our work area clean, some simple things that we can maintain with a piece of equipment, and it cuts great. Okay, we've got a piece of flat plate here, and we can easily cut that on here. I'm going to demonstrate doing that. We're going to let the blade stop. If you're cutting flat plate like this on here, I'm going to think you're wasting your time. Because what you should be doing is you should be using the shear for that. Because the shear will cut that all day long. It's going to be nice and fast. And you can cut them by the hundreds in just a couple of minutes. So with cutting flat plate, Don't bother with the little things. You can, but you can also shear them. Get up to something like this, 1 inch by like 6 inches. Now, I'm here to tell you, this thing has got lots of power and it's going to cut that. Thicker material, sometimes it's going to need wax again. And I can cut that whole big thick piece. Now, I'll tell you, that's a big piece, and it cut it right off of there. But the blade's getting a little dull because it's not as fast as it should be. Let me tell you that we need to put a new blade on there sometime fairly soon. It's a pipe here. We can cut a piece of pipe. Pipe cuts real easy on here. Make sure to hold it good and firm. Cuts it like nothing. Okay, cuts it like nothing. Another thing is we can cut it on an angle. Pipe or anything else can be cut on an angle. Once again, we let it stop first. Now we got an angle on a pipe. We put that back straight, tighten it up, of course. We're going to say, hey, this is a bigger, thicker pipe. Will it cut that? It sure will. And it cuts it right off. You notice that little piece came right underneath there near the blade? It's a good thing we let that stop before lifting it up, and we cut that pipe. Well, it'll cut pipe, it'll cut angle, it'll cut plate, it'll cut a lot of things. It'll even cut, yeah, it'll cut this piece of I-beam. This is a nice big piece of I-beam. There's different ways to cut it. Now, you want to make sure it's held nice and tight. Will this thing cut this whole piece of I-beam? I bet it will. Okay, now it's a real good example of what can happen with this thing. We heard a noise. It caught that thing a little bit, okay, but we didn't pull the blade up. We haven't caused any damage to anything. We've cut that right off of there. But what we're going to need to do, we probably should unplug our saw to make sure. And it's a good example of what might happen, guys, is something might catch one time, and we're going to unplug it, and then we're going to inspect it. To spin it around, we're going to say, it looks okay, we haven't damaged the tooth. Okay, now guys, we're going to move on to a piece of T-bar, okay? Now this doesn't have any scabs on it because I cleaned them off. We can cut this thing, but we can cut this thing and we can cut it this way, or we can cut it this way, or we can cut it this way, but I don't like any of those things because it's not supported. It wants to be supported real hard against that fence. So I'm going to think about things a little bit, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to cut this T-bar. I'm going to put a block of wood underneath, 2 blocks, so it's going to set on there. I don't want to cut through the wood. I can if I want, but I'm going to slide that back out of the way because this thing is supported, and it's supported good. And I can cut that T-bar right off of there, and I can push it in there. It's not going to be tippy, okay? We don't want it to be tippy. We want it to be really firm. If the stuff isn't firmly held in here, it's going to grab it, and it's going to make it fly, and somebody's going to get hurt and wreck the equipment. So when we cut T-bar, we're going to put blocks under it. Okay, we've cut the end off, piece of T-bar, it was satisfactory. We can take and we can cut it, tighten that up, and we can cut a bevel on that T-bar. We can cut that at 25 degrees. Okay, I'm happy I got that off there at 25 degrees. Our whole piece is cut right through. It's beautiful. I might just say, hey, we want to even do a little more to this T-bar. We'd like to cope it. I'm going to cut those off at 45 degrees, and I still got my blocks of wood. And I'm moving this over to 45 degrees. And now I'm going to lock it in place. I'm going to move this down until I got it just where I want it. I'm going to hold it tight up against here again. I'm going to cut it. Okay, I want to cut it the other way. I'm going to move it to 45 degrees. I'm going to spin this thing around and cut it like this. But I'm still going to take my blocks of wood and put them here and move over to the other side of the saw. I'm right-handed and I like to work a certain way, but I'm going to get in here and I'm going to get it just where I want, and I'm going to cut this again. Once again, I always keep the saw down until it stops. We're going to look at the work that I've done here. I cut this on a 25 degrees here, and I've coped the end of it, and it looks beautiful. It didn't take me very long, and we did it safely, and we can make them by the hundreds. So the day might come when we get a curved piece. And should we cut a curved piece on here? It's already been rolled. This is a piece of T-bar again. It's been rolled. Can we cut this on here? We can't cut it like that because it's not sitting on there and it's not supported. We can't cut it this way because if we cut it this way, it's not supported in the back, and we don't like that. We know we've got to put blocks of wood underneath here so that it's held this way, but okay, well, still not going to be good enough because it's not tight in here, and what happens is we yank it in there. If it yanks it in there, we're going to wreck the equipment and we're going to hurt ourselves. So I'm not going to do that. What I've done, I took and I made a couple smaller blocks because this is a smaller piece of T-bar. Now there's a couple scabs on here and I wish those weren't there. It bothers me that they are, but we're just cutting up some scrap metal and I'm going to demonstrate what I want to demonstrate here. And I've taken that curve on the inside and I put the blocks underneath here. Now it's going to be supported really well, and it's going to cut and it'll cut easy. We kept our blade down until it stopped. We cut our T-bar and it was curved. It's not a problem for us. Okay guys, you know, we've gone through a lot of different cutting operations, and this tool is going to work real good for us. We're going to be safe. We're going to get a lot of work done. We've also we said we're going to keep this brush here, so we need to go ahead and make somewhere to hang that. We still have that to do. There's a little bit of maintenance items probably to do with this saw, but we've got our work area clean. We have a nice long tube of wax sitting right with the machine. We've got some scrap here in the bucket. We're going to keep that bucket right there so we can just throw the ends in there. We've also organized underneath this rack. Got some pieces there, got a couple pieces here. We also don't mind if we put a couple pieces behind this fence, because behind the fence is not our work area, and we can keep some stuff back there during the day, and you know, that'll be fine for us. We also are going to make sure, it's repeating, but we're not going to put pieces with these scabs here underneath here because they're not ready to be cut on this machine, so we're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get all the extrusions from all over the shop, and we're going to put all the good pieces underneath here so we can make something with it. When we do these things, we're really getting somewhere with this machine, and it's going to work out great for us, and I appreciate you guys' time today. Thanks for watching.